Hare Krishna. I'd like to welcome you all to this session of Bhakti Lata Youth Forum. And we are now for some time studying this book, Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. So today we will be continuing from page 33. There's been a little gap because of different events that were taking place. So just to recap, we are on chapter 1, Teachings of Lord Chaitanya to Rupa Goswami. So as we know that Lord Chaitanya, who is Krishna himself, who appeared 500 years back in Bengal, Mayapur, he started this Sankirtan movement or the chanting of the holy names of Krishna and developing love of God. So he instructed his disciples, especially Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami personally, and we are reading from this chapter, which is his teachings to Rupa Goswami. So Rupa Goswami, he met Lord Chaitanya at the Satvameda Ghat in Prayag, and for 10 days, Rupa Goswami was instructed by Lord Chaitanya about the truth of Lord Krishna, the principles of devotional service, and the transcendental relationship with Krishna. So we already read about how the Lord began explaining that within this Brahman or within this universe, there are innumerable living entities, and who, according to their own fruitive activities, are transmigrating from one species of life to another species, from one place to another place, and that all the living entities, they are all part and parcel of the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna, whether it is the human beings or aquatics or trees or animals, insects, they're all part and parcel of Krishna that we discussed. Then we Lord Chaitanya further elaborated on the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam by pointing out that there are two kinds of living entities, the eternally liberated and the eternally conditioned. And the eternal conditioned living entities are of two types, the moving and the non-moving. But the human form of life is extremely rare. So that was also discussed in this chapter. Out of those who believe in the values of the scriptures and the advancement of human civilization, there are two classes. One is the righteous and the unrighteous. Those who are righteous generally execute fruitive activities in order to desire some good results for sense gratification. So, out of many such persons who engage in the activities of sense gratification, only a few come to know about the absolute truth. We can see that there are so many living entities and so many people, even in this small city of Mumbai, which is like one speck in the whole, in comparison to the whole universe. There are very few people who are interested in understanding the absolute truth. So that is also among human beings. Also, there are very few people who are actually. Then there are the Gyanis, the empiric philosophers. Out of many hundreds and thousands of such empiric philosophers, only a handful can attain liberation. There are so many different types of philosophers, but hardly a handful can attain liberation. And when one is liberated, he theoretically understands that the living entity is not composed of material elements, but is the spirit soul, distinct from matter. So when we understand that we are not this body and that we are actually the spirit soul and they are distinct from matter. So what the difference between the body and the soul? What is the body? What is the soul? That also was described. But simply by theoretically understanding this doctrine, one can be called liberated, but actually a mukta or a liberated soul is he who understands his constitutional position as the supreme, as the eternal servant of the Supreme Lord. So out of all these people are those who are actually in knowledge or understand who are also called liberated, there are very few who actually understand. So one who understands the eternal position or the constitutional position of the soul. So what is the constitutional position of the soul? Can one Jivera Swarup hoy? Yes. So the identity or the constitutional position of the living entity is that one is the eternal servant of the Lord. Such liberated souls. So when you understand that we are the eternal servant of the Lord, then what happens? One engages with faith and devotion in the service of the Lord. Okay, so that's what happens, is that one engages with faith and devotion in the service of the Lord, and these are called Krishna Bhaktas. So that's what was discussed so far, and also how when one gets you become a devotee or you become a Krishna Bhakta, then how by the mercy of the spiritual master or the guru, the seed of devotion is sowed within the heart of the living entity. So the spiritual master, by the mercy of the spiritual master and Krishna, one receives the seed of devotion. He has only to sow the seed in the field of the heart, just as a gardener sows the seed of a valuable tree. After sowing the seed, then what has to be done? Watering. What is the watering process? Shravanam, hearing and chanting. So by hearing and chanting, this is the watering process of the seed of devotion that is there within the heart of the living entity. And then what happens with the watering process of hearing and chanting, the seed of devotion, what happens to it? It sprouts, yeah, and then it grows. Yes, it grows. So after sowing the seed, then when the plant of devotion sprouts up from the seed of devotion, it begins to grow freely. When it is full grown, then what happens? Yes, it surpasses the length and breadth of the universe and enters the transcendental atmosphere, where everything is bathed in the effulgence of the Brahma Jyoti. Then the plant penetrates this Brahma Jyoti and gradually, can you help us? Gradually enters the planet known as Goloka Vrindavan. So this is how there the plant, what happens to the plant when it enters Goloka Vrindavan? What happens to the plant? It takes shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna. That is the ultimate goal of devotional service. So what is the goal of devotional service? To take shelter of the lotus feet of Lord Krishna in Goloka. So now, even though we may be watering the plant and we may be doing our chanting and by the process of chanting and hearing, but it needs to be taken care of. So how can one take care of the plant? Yeah, how one? avoiding offenses. So we discussed about the offenses, how that can either stunt the growth of the plant or the plant will stop growing and then it will wither. So therefore, we need to constantly be careful also. Just as a gardener, he has to keep an eye to make sure that it is not being the plants or his garden is not being destroyed by some animals or some insects, birds, or whatever. So therefore, it needs to be protected. So what is the thing is the 10? So the 10 offenses. So one has to defend the plant of bhakti by tending it properly and taking care not to commit offenses. If one is cautious, his plant will properly thrive. And when we discuss the 10 offenses, after that, Lord Chaitanya begins to describe the devotional service and its symptoms to Rupa Goswami. He explains that pure devotional service, there can be no desire other than the desire to advance in Krishna. So that is our desire. Pure devotional service means we have to. So this is the principle. Devotional service, that the symptoms are, what is it? There is no desire. Only desire to advance in Krishna. Okay, so till here we discussed last time. Now we read further from page number 33. If you can want to follow, you can follow. So after the principles or the symptoms of devotional service were described, then further Lord Chaitanya instructs Rupa Goswami that a pure devotee accepts the loving service of the Lord, but rejects all kind of liberation for his personal sense gratification. So a devotee, he rejects even all kinds of liberation for his personal sense gratification. So what are the different kinds of liberation? What are the different kinds of liberation? Okay, one by one. Yes, Yogini. Sahijya. Now, Sahijya is what? Becoming one with the Lord. Second, Samithya. Then, what does that mean? Samithya. What is Samithya? Okay, Samithya, that is Salokya. Look. Salokya means the same. Having the close association with the Lord, living on the same planet as the Lord. Then what else is there? Having the same, living side by side. That is Samithya. Living side by side. Then having the same, Sarupya, same form as the Lord. And then, what is the other thing? Shakti. Having the same opulence, equal opulence as the Lord. So these are the different kinds of liberation which the devotee is not even interested in such kind of liberation. So Lord Kapila explains that as soon as a pure devotee hears the glories and transcendental qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is seated in everyone's heart, his mind immediately flows towards the Lord, just as the waters of the Ganges flows towards the sea. So this is the mood of the devotee, that immediately the moment the devotee hears about the transcendental qualities of the Lord, of the Supreme Lord, who is seated in everyone's heart. So the Lord is seated in each and every living entity's heart. So then just as he hears, then what happens is his mind immediately flows towards the Lord, just as the waters of the Ganges flows towards the sea. Such spontaneous attraction of service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is most important to pure devotional service. So this kind of attraction, it's like just as we see people are meditating. So meditation means they're just fixing their mind on something, either on some, sound, or just some blank. But this is called something like open-eyed meditation. Open eye, it's not closed eye. Just by hearing, see. With your eyes open, or that you see in your mind, and and go finally land up sleeping. So that's not. This is your see. You can actually just see the Lord which is within the heart. Devotional service is pure when one engages in the service of the Supreme Lord without any motive or without being hampered with material impediments. Devotional service of the Lord is, what is it? Is pure. When one engages without any, two things are there, motivation and without any hampering. No hampering and no motivation. Just pure devotional service. Like many times some may have a motive for something, even the motive of having liberation. So when it comes to even a devotee doesn't even want liberation. So what to talk about material things or things in this material world, whether it is wealth or health or whatever, beauty or possessions or positions, they're not actually interested in. What are they interested in? They don't have any motivation, and they don't want to worship the Lord for gaining those things. They're not worshipping Lord with a motive. The only motive, what is the only motive? To serve the Lord and to please Him. There is a motive, because everybody has a motive. You cannot be without a motive. So, what is the motive? This is a transcendental motive. It's not a mundane or material thing. So, have this motive and without being hampered. We have been hearing so many days devotional service about, and we were discussing Ramayana about Hanuman. No hamper. Right? When he was on his task of doing his seva, he was met with so many obstacles. What is the first obstacle? Menak. So Menak is what represents? What does it represent? So Menak is a golden mountain. And Hanuman was on this journey across the ocean to fulfill his task of finding Sita on behalf of Lord Ram. He was on a journey on behalf of Lord Ram in search for Sita. So as he was passing the ocean, the first obstacle that he met was Menak. And Menak was a golden mountain. And that mountain, actually, we all face this obstacle. It's a mountain, golden mountain. And it was being very nice and kind and says that, oh, you are on this long journey, you're going on this long journey. Why don't you take some rest? Take some rest on this wonderful mountain. And if there is everything here, it's very comfortable for you. And you take some rest and then you. So these are the obstacles. When we come in the devotional service, and we are practicing our chanting and reading and seva, and so many things we are doing. And then sometimes, and because of that, we get some honor also. We get some respect. We are offered some comforts also. In the process of, we get certain facilities because we are on this path. So then what happens is that it can take us away from our goal. These comforts and the honor and distinction, and all these things can sometimes, and then how does it comes? It comes in the form of maybe our friends, or your own some devotees. Oh, you're doing so much now. Why don't you take some rest? You're working so hard, so much seva, so much. You're getting up early, you're chanting. Why don't you take some rest? So then that sometimes can become an obstacle if we are not strong enough, just like Hanuman, how he handled it. If we are not strong enough to not lose sight of our goal, at any point of time, it should be unimpeded, without any, just like it says here, that without any impediments, material impediments, impediments which are, there are chances of us getting diverted or deviated from our goals. So comforts are one of them. So this mountain was offering comfort in saying, like, sometimes we are in a task. We are in a task and he says, oh no, we are working. Why don't you eat something? Why don't you take rest? Why don't you do? It's not that you don't do it. But if you until you do your goal, like when we have some particular seva, we should be fixed in that seva. If we have let's say a seva of serving prasadam, make sure that we are fixed on this goal and we serve the prasadam, and once the task is completed, then we should rest. Or any other task, any other seva or whatever we have, we should focus on the task, we should focus on the goal, and then not lose sight of it. And then after that, for that also, then another thing that comes is the obstacle. Oh, now I've done so much. Then I become proud. That's also another obstacle, which this golden mountain was a kind of an obstacle. That, oh, you're doing so much. And then there is fame and name and so many. So we have to be very careful. If we understand, therefore, the main two things very important, which covers everything that is there, we need to know for our spiritual advancement, is to understand first thing which Lord Chaitanya is telling here is the difference between the body and the soul. If we know the difference between the body and the soul, that the body is temporary and the soul is eternal, and then we understand that, then we will never have any problem. Another thing is that when we understand that I am spirit soul, and then we understand that I am the eternal servant of Krishna, then we have no problem. Then all these obstacles of pride, of position, of situations will never trouble us, because we know we are the servant of the servant of the servant of Krishna. And we are not this body. So if anybody is creating any problems for us in our life, it is pertaining to the body. So then we understand this is all external. The soul cannot be touched. The soul cannot be damaged. The soul cannot be cut. The soul cannot be burned. It cannot be seen. So when you come to the position of understanding the soul, then whatever external disturbances are there, they will not bother us. So these are very, very important things which we have to learn. And it's very easier said than done, but we have to implement it and try to understand it and try to remember. Like Hanuman did that. Like when he was trying to search for Sita, and he was completely disappointed. He was completely gave up hope. And then he remembered that one should not succumb. One should still persevere and continue. So all these things, when we know, so these things, why we have to know, and in our in our whole consciousness, we should all understand this so that anytime we are faced with any obstacle, then we know how to deal. That is why the Shastras go on telling us that we are not this body, we are the spiritual, we are eternal, we are the servant of Krishna. This means servant of Krishna. In the material world, servant is considered to be not a very good position. But it's not Krishna, it's not like this. In the transcendental world, it is completely different. Krishna is completely attracted. He's attracted and he becomes subordinate. That he sells himself to one who is serving him. Right? So this is another thing. So Mainak was one obstacle. So that becomes impediment. The second obstacle was what? Surasa. She was the demoness. And initially she was sent by the demigods because the demigods were very much concerned as to whether Hanuman would be able to fulfill this task of finding Sita or not. And so they wanted to test because they knew how strong Ravan was and how powerful he was, whether he would be able to. And therefore, this Sursa. So that is another obstacle that is also called competition. So we have to be very careful because sometimes that can also take us away from the goal. Like, oh, this person is doing this much seva, so I will do this much seva. Then if that person is doing more seva, then I will do more seva. And I will. So this is what happened. Every time when Sursa, she was trying to obstruct Hanuman from going ahead. So he was opening his mouth. She had opened her mouth very wide. So then Hanuman expanded himself twice that size of the mouth. And then when he expanded more, then she also expanded. And it went on like that and like that. And it is just a waste of time. This trying to compete, trying to let the other person down, or trying to show that I am superior. It's just a waste of time. So what is the solution? What did Hanuman do?
He became simple. Comics not
yes. So when that position, best is to become humble. So he became small and he immediately crossed. Because she said, you cannot cross me until you go into my mouth. When I have a benediction from Lord Brahma, that whoever comes this way is my food. So he was anyway trying to say that also that, okay, I will come back and I will satisfy you. But she was not. So that's how we see that in that case, that can become an obstacle on the path of devotion. So no impediments, of course. Now I don't want to get into the whole journey, but like that we see that so many places he faced so many obstacles, but still he did not lose focus of his goal. So he told Mainak, and to respect, he just touched Mainak and he went off. And in the same way, he just entered into her mouth and he went. Like that. So our service should be without motive and without being hampered by material impediments. So our service should be like that. We should be focused on the goal. Our goal is to get back home, back to Godhead. Our goal is to serve Krishna. Our goal is to please Krishna. And our goal is to be fixed in our sadhana. Be fixed in our sadhana. The pure devotee does not desire to live on the same planet as the Supreme Lord, nor does he desire some opulence as the Lord, nor does he desire to have the same form of the Lord, nor does he desire to live side by side, nor to merge into his existence, etc. Even if a devotee were offered such rewards by the Lord, he would reject them. The point is that the devotee is so much absorbed in transcendental service of the Lord that he has no time to think of any benefits beyond his immediate engagement. He has no time to think. I have my service and I don't care. I'm not concerned with it. And that is what Krishna told us. And you focus on your, don't think of victory or defeat. Just do your work, do your duty, perform it. With your mind fixed on me. Ma'am, anusmara yudhyacha. Fixing your mind on me, you continue to do your service without thinking about what will I get. Many times we feel like that. Then when we are practicing devotion service, that, oh, I'm doing so much, what am I getting? What am I getting? That's not what our concern. Our concern is to have the full faith and do. I don't like many times we want to, okay, then we see, oh, doing this, then I will get more benefit, and this I will go back home, back to God and faster. And then we want to know, about Krishna, we want to know who is Krishna, then we want to know who is Jagannath, who is Narasimhadev, who is this avatar, that avatar, everybody. We don't care. Maybe the personality of God is and our mood should be like, we don't care whether Jagannath is supreme and he's going to give us a benefit or not. We just have pure love. If I am serving Krishna, it's only for love, with love. I don't care. I don't want anything from. Our mood is that we just want to give Krishna. We are a devotee, pure devotee has no desire. When he does not have desire for liberation, then what to talk about anything else? So, our focus should be just like an ordinary businessman. His focus is on his business. So in the same way, we don't think of anything beyond our service. So if we have been given a particular service, we should just concentrate on that. And our service, somebody may say, oh, but I don't have any service, but our service is there. Sevan Mukhi Jivo. Chanting Hare Krishna is our service. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram. So this is what we here it is mentioned, that if one is so absorbed in rendering of service, he can be understood to be elevated to the highest position of Bhakti. But such transcendental loving service alone, by such transcendental loving service alone, one can surpass the influence of Maya and relish pure love of God. As long as one desires material benefit or liberation, which are called the two witches of allurement, he cannot relish the taste of transcendental loving service of the Lord. So, as long as we have this desire, two are there, material benefit and liberation. So, most of the time, then that is not pure bhakti. That is not pure. If we are in bhakti, then anya abhilashta, no desire, except the desire to please the Lord. Samsiddhi haritoshanam, that we are just trying to satisfy the Lord, because then the Lord, He takes care of everything. Okay, so next is, there are 3 stages of devotional service. The first is the beginning stage of cultivation. The second is the realization stage. And the third is the supreme stage, is the attainment of love for Godhead. So the 3 stages. So the first stage is the beginning stage of cultivating devotional service. So that is called sadhana bhakti, or devotional service for a neophyte, which is rendered under the direction of a pure devotee. So this is sadhana, following the regulative principles, as well as here it is mentioned that the first stage, the 9 different methods of cultivating devotional service are hearing, chanting, remembering, etc. And all these processes are employed in the first. So Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Pada, Sevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atma Nivedanam. This is the 9th process of devotional service. And that is the sadhana stage. And that is the stage which we all are in now. And we have to keep doing the hearing and chanting so that we can progress to the next stage. And all these stages, they happen automatically. It's not that you have to claim it or you can teach it. It comes automatically. Simply by hearing and chanting, then what happens is we come to the second stage. If one is engaged in chanting and hearing with devotion and faith, his material misgivings gradually become vanquished. Gradually becomes vanquished. It's not like will happen overnight. It's a gradual process. Gradual process. Slowly, regularly. Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, Satatam Kittayanta Uma, practicing all the principles of devotion service. So practicing the variety bhakti or practicing all the principles of sadhana. And then we come to the second stage. It's called Raga Bhakti. Okay, that is the second stage. The second stage is realization of service. So then we come to the realization that this is where we have intense attachment for the Lord. Our attachment increases. So the first is cultivation, second is realization, and third is the supreme stage is the attainment of love of God. So then you come to the final, the third stage, which is attainment of love of God. So as his state in devotional service gradually increases, he becomes assured of higher perfectional position. In this way, one can become firmly fixed in devotion, increase his taste for it, become attached and feel ecstasy. But very important is the hearing and chanting. Without that perfection, okay, how will you build? Just like if you don't know 1, 2, 3, or you don't know the numbers from 1 to 9, you don't know the alphabets from A to Z, and how will you build up? Because everything begins with this. So if you want to understand, these are the basic things. For advancement in spiritual life, basic thing is regularly constant hearing and chanting. If we are not doing that, then it is difficult to reach to these stages. To come to the stage of devotional service. You cannot come to the stage of love of God. It just cannot happen like that. It's not possible. It has to go through the process. When one continues the process of hearing and chanting, attachment grows and assumes the name of love of God. So by continuous hearing and chanting, and when one attains the third stage of transcendental love of God, then occurs further development known as transcendental affection, emotion, ecstasy, and extreme and intense attachment. It's not just the love of God. After that also, when one continues the process, so one attains this. They are technically known as Raga, Anuraga, Bhav, and Mahabhav. These are all those stages. And these stages automatically happen if we do good quality hearing and chanting. And when we do this good quality hearing and chanting, we keep increasing and the things keep happening naturally. The process from one stage to another can be compared to the thickening of sugar candy juice. So, well, now the Lord is explaining that how the first stage, sugar candy juice. In the first stage, sugar candy juice is like a thin liquid. When by evaporation, it becomes thicker and turns into molasses. Finally, it turns into granules and becomes sugar, rock candy, and so on. Just as liquid sugar juice progresses from one stage to another, similarly, transcendental love for the supreme love develops by stages. Not that it goes as it happens like that. It's not possible. Until you have gone through these stages, you just cannot have rock candy. It has to go through the. So when one actually becomes situated on the transcendental platform, he becomes steady. Unless one is so situated, his position may not be steady and may fall down. So one has to come to that stage, and that stage to be steady. If you are not steady, then you will fall down. That's the reason why so many times we see devotees, they come, they start, they practice, and then after they are not steady, and because they are not steady, then they fall down and they think that the process is not. Here Krishna is giving us the proper process, and this is the process we have to follow because we are fighting against the illusionary energy, which is very difficult to do. So, we have time. So, those Vaidhi Bhakti, very important sadhana bhakti, Avidhi Bhakti. So, in so Prabhupada mentions that the worship, generally, the worship of the Lord begins with the worship of Narayana Vishnu. Whereas the worship of Lord Krishna and Radha is most confidential. Lord Narayana is worshipable by the Pancharatrika Vidhi or regulative principles. So we are following there are two marks. One is the Pancharatrika mark and one is the Bhagavat mark. Okay. So Pancharatrika Vidhi, regulative principles, whereas Lord Krishna is worshipable by the Bhagavat Vidhi. Actually, neophyte devotees worship the Lord according to the Pancharatrika Vidhi or the regulative principles enjoined in the Narada Pancharatrika. Radha Krishna cannot be approached by the neophyte devotees. Therefore, temple worship according to the regulative principles is offered to Lakshmi Narayana. In fact, we see that the worship, even here, the worship is being done Dada Ras Bihari. The standard is Lakshmi Narayana. According to regulative principles. Because we have to go through that directly, because worshipping Radha and Krishna is most confidential. How that is further explained, that how the different relationship, unless one develops a relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is very difficult. So, therefore, temple worship according to regulative principle is offered to Lakshmi Narayana. Although there may be a Radha Krishna of form, the worship of the neophyte devotee is acceptable as Lakshmi Narayana worship. Even if there is Radha Krishna, Lakshmi Narayana, which is very, very conducive to our progress to come to the stage, that stage. Worship according to Pancharatrika Vidhi is called Vidhi Marg, and worship according to Bhagavat Vidhi principle is called Raga Marg. And the principle of Raga Marg are especially meant for devotees who are elevated to the Vrindavan platform. So in this way, what we are doing, therefore we are all in this stage where we are practicing Vidhi Bhakti or Vidhi Bhakti or Bhakti with principle. So there are many things which are mentioned in the Shastra. So we have to follow. So where were we? Yes. So we have to become stable. And to become stable, because we are in this material world and we are conditioned, we have to practice the principles and become stable. There are even stages beyond the position, and they are known as Vaibhav, Anubhav, Satvika, and Vyabhaja. After one attains this, there is actually an exchange of rasa or transcendental activity with the Supreme Lord. The exchange in loving reciprocation between the lover and the beloved is generally called Krishna Bhakti Ras. So this Krishna Bhakti is an exchange of loving relationship. Between whom? Between the Lord. Yes. Yes. Okay. So we are. So the exchange of loving reciprocation between the lover and the beloved is generally called Krishna Bhakti Ras. It should be noted that the transcendental loving exchanges stands on the steadfast position of Sthai Bhav as explained above. Now, where is it standing on? It's standing on the Sthai Bhav, fixed position. The basic principle of Vaibhav is Sthai Bhav, and all other activities are auxiliary for the development of transcendental love. The ecstasy of transcendental love has two components: the context and the cause of excitement. The context is also divided into two parts: the subject and the object. So there are two things. One is the context. What is context? Yes, subject and the object. For anything, there has to be a context, right? So that context is the subject. Like our subject now is about devotional. And what is the objective? So this is what subject and the object. The exchange of devotional service is the subject, and Krishna is the object. The transcendental qualities are the cause of excitement. Now, all the transcendental qualities that Krishna has, this is the cause of excitement. So, ecstasy has two components. One is the context and the cause of excitement, and context has two components, that is subject and context and subject. And the transcendental qualities are the cause of excitement. This means that the transcendental qualities of Krishna excite the devotees to serve him. Okay. So what is the object? Service. The transcendental qualities, what is the subject? Transcendental qualities of Krishna is to excite or encourage us to serve. So the impersonal Mayavadi philosophers say that the absolute truth has no specific qualities, but the Vaishnava philosophers say that the absolute truth is described as Nirguna. Yes, the Lord, they also say Nirguna, but Nirguna means because it does not have any material qualities. He does not have material qualities. Therefore, he is Nirguna, without qualities, because he has no material qualities. This is not to say that he does not have spiritual qualities. Does not have material qualities. That doesn't mean he doesn't have any qualities at all. He has. What does he have? Spiritual qualities. Indeed, the Lord's spiritual qualities are so great and are so enchanting that they can even attract a liberated person. So we saw how the folk Maharaj attracted the Lord. This is explained in the Atmaram verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, where it is said that those who are already situated on the platform of self-realization are attracted by the transcendental qualities of Krishna. This means that Krishna's qualities are not material, but pure and pure. Now, what happens? Oh, that's excitement. The higher stage of ecstasy can be characterized by the following 13 transcendental activities: dancing, rolling on the floor, singing, clapping, bristling of the hair or on the hair standing on end, thundering, yawning, breathing heavily, forgetting social conventions, salivating, laughing, aching, coughing. All these symptoms are not awakened simultaneously. They act according to the exchange of transcendental relationships. Sometimes one symptom is prominent, and at other time another is prominent. So these are all the symptoms. It is not that all will be there. Any one of them, we see that when there is that ecstasy, there's dancing. But the coming in contact with Krishna's qualities and by hearing his holy name, then, or the kirtan, there is this symptoms of ecstasy. So, standing on it, singing, clapping, it's all this yawning, so many things. The transcendental rasas or relationships can be divided into 5. Do we have time? Okay, the transcendental rasas or relations can be divided into 5. The initial state is called Shanta Vrati. First stage. What is it? Shanta. Wherein one who is liberated from material contamination appreciates the greatness of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One who attains this stage does not exactly engage in transcendental loving service of the Lord, for this is a neutral stage. Now, this is called Shant Ras. Yeah, Shant Rati. Shant Ras means what? When one first point is he should be liberated, in the liberated state from what? Material control. Appreciates the greatness of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And one who attains this stage does not exactly engage in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, for this is a neutral stage. Can you give one example? Okay. Which we are studying right now. Okay. Yes. Okay. We are studying right now in Srimad Bhagavatam. So the examples of Shant Bhakta or devotees in the neutral stage are the 9 yogis named Kavi, Havi, Antariksha. It's all there in the Prabhuda, Pipala Yana, Avinhota, Dravida or Jumila, Stamasa and Karbhajan, and the 4 Kumaras. So the 4 Kumaras, Sanandan, Sanat Kumar and Sanatan are also examples of this first stage of Shant. They attained that. They will not attain that service. Neutral stage. Why? Because they appreciated and they glorified. We saw the example when they saw the Lord. They were Brahmavadis. When they got the darshan of the Lord, they were so much attracted to the transcendental form of the Lord that they started glorifying the. So the second stage. The second stage, which is called Dasya Rati, a person appreciates his position as being everlasting subordinate to the Supreme Lord. Dasya means subordinate. And he understands that he is eternally dependent on the causeless mercy of the Supreme Lord. So, we have an example here. Yes, doing that. No. Okay. Extremely dependent on the causeless mercy of the Supreme Lord. At that same time, there is an awakening of natural affection. So there is now what is happening from neutral is getting a little more. From neutral, there's one more thing, and then there's affection. So this is how the progress is taking place. At that time, there is awakening of natural affection, such as is felt by a son who grows up and begins to appreciate his father's benediction. At this stage, the living entity wants to serve the Supreme Lord instead of serving Maya or illusion. So this is the, what is that? Second stage. Third stage. In the third stage, it is called Sakyarati or Sakyaras. Transcendental love is developed and one associates with the Supreme as an equal level of love and respect. So here there is love and there is affection and there is affection, love and respect. At this stage is further developed. There is joking and as such relaxed exchanging as laughing and so on. On this level, there is a fraternal exchanges with the Supreme Person and one is free from all bondage. At this stage, one practically forgets his inferior position as a living entity, but at the same time, he has a greater respect for the Supreme Person. Now he has become friends. Sakyara. So this is the next stage. Like Sri Dama and Vrindavan, Bhim and Arjun and Vatika. So there are so many friends. Krishna says to Arjuna, Sakha. Right. That it's all mentioned later. We just finished this. Then we will discuss all the examples of the different things which is mentioned later. Very nice. So the next stage is Vatsa. The fraternal affection in the preceding stage develops into paternal. Now from that friendship is there, the affection is there, but now it has gone into paternal. At this time, the living entity tries to become the parent of God. Now that is what is it called? Vatsa. Become parent. Concern. There's love. There's affection. At this time, the living entity tries to be the parent of God. Instead of worshipping the Lord, the living entity as a parent of the Supreme becomes an object of worship for the Supreme Lord. Now it is getting there. That's how it is developing from one to the then the Lord worships. At this stage, the Lord depends on the mercy of his pure devotee and puts himself under the control of the devotee to be raised. The devotee in this stage attains a position wherein he can embrace the Supreme Lord and even kiss his head. So now how it is progressed, and now it comes to the final. The fifth stage is called Madhura Rati. There is an actual transcendental exchange of conjugal love between the lover and the beloved. It is at this stage that Krishna and the dancers of Braja glance at one another. For on this platform, there is an exchange of loving glances, motion of the eyes, pleasant words, attractive smiles, etc. We will stop here. Continue. Or we'll read one more this last one. Besides these 5 primary rasas or relationships, there are 7 secondary rasas. So there are many rasas. These are the 5 primary, the main. But there are others also. There are 7 secondary rasas, which consists of laughing, having wonderful vision, entering into a chivalrous relationship, experiencing pity, feeling anger, and experience ghastly and devastation. So this is now Veer Ras. Who is Veer Ras? Bhima. Sorry, Bhishma. Veer Ras. He wanted to have that chivalrous, wanted to fight. Bhishma related to Krishna as a warrior in a chivalrous, and Hiranyakashipu, Bhash. So these are the five primary rasas constantly remain within the heart of the pure devotee, and the 7 secondary rasas sometimes appear and disappear to enrich the flavors and tastes of the primary ones. After enriching the primary rasas, they disappear. So this is such a wonderful relationship with the Supreme Lord in different rasas. Why we are running after this mundane relationship, mundane structure. Sorry? Sorry. Thank you very much. Any questions? Anita? Yeah, last class. Okay. Hare Krishna. So we continue.